Dive into the intellectual clash between René Descartes and David Hume, two titans who shaped the essence of modern thought. Explore how their contrasting approaches to reason, experience, and knowledge still echo in today's philosophical, scientific, and ethical discussions. This podcast has been generated with Podifier, the app that transforms any document, article, or topic of your choice into engaging conversations. More information in the description below. So, Descartes was all about finding certainty through reason, right? But how exactly did he propose we achieve that?
Descartes believed that to find certainty, we had to doubt everything that could possibly be doubted until we reached something absolutely indubitable. He famously said, "Cogito, ergo sum," meaning, I think, therefore I am. This was his foundational truth, something he believed couldn't be questioned. He started from this point to construct a framework of knowledge based on clear and distinct ideas. He was essentially advocating for a rationalist approach, arguing that through the power of reason, we can deduce truths about the world. Descartes thought our senses could deceive us, so to him, using pure reason was the only way to achieve true knowledge. He developed the method of systematic doubt, whereby stripping away all assumptions and beliefs, only that which is undeniable remains. This method is still influential, especially in fields like mathematics and logic, where certainty is paramount.
And how did Hume's perspective differ? He didn't think reason was the path to truth?
Exactly. Hume was an empiricist, which meant he believed that knowledge comes from sensory experience. He argued that we couldn't rely solely on reason to understand the world because our ideas are ultimately derived from what we perceive through our senses. For Hume, understanding the world was about observing, collecting data, and drawing conclusions from experience. He challenged the notion of causality, suggesting that what we perceive as cause and effect is merely a habit of thought rather than a provable fact. This radical idea questioned not only philosophy but also the scientific methods of his time. Hume's skepticism extended to concepts like the self and free will, pushing the boundaries of how we understand human consciousness and decision-making. His work laid the foundation for later thinkers in psychology and social sciences.
So, if Descartes focused on reason and Hume on experience, how did their ideas influence the development of the scientific method?
Their contrasting views actually highlighted the need for a balanced approach, which became the bedrock of the scientific method. The scientific method relies on both rational hypotheses and empirical testing. You start with a theory or hypothesis, often derived from reason, and then you test it through observation and experimentation, grounding it in experience. This synthesis of rationalism and empiricism has been pivotal in advancements across various fields, from natural sciences to social sciences. It ensures that scientific claims are not just logically coherent but also empirically verifiable. Modern science thrives on this dual approach, where reason helps form hypotheses and experience verifies them. It's a dynamic interplay that ensures our understanding of the world is both robust and adaptable.
But doesn't that tension between reason and experience still cause debates today?
Absolutely. This tension is evident in contemporary debates in artificial intelligence, where questions arise about whether machines can truly think like humans. AI systems primarily operate on data and experience, but they're also programmed with logical algorithms, reflecting this duality. In ethics, we often see debates on whether decisions should be based on rational principles or empirical outcomes. Similarly, in politics, the tension surfaces when deciding whether policy should be driven by ideological reasoning or empirical data. These debates underscore the ongoing relevance of Descartes and Hume's philosophies. They remind us that while reason and experience might seem at odds, they are both essential in navigating the complexities of modern life.
It's fascinating that their ideas continue to influence so many areas. It really shows the depth and impact of their philosophical legacies.
Continuing with Descartes, his method of doubt was radical for its time. By questioning everything that could possibly be doubted, he aimed to strip away all uncertainties. This led him to his famous conclusion, cogito, ergo sum, which he considered an undeniable truth. Descartes sought to establish knowledge on a foundation as solid as mathematics. For example, just as the equation 2 plus 2 is equal to 4 stands unchallenged even if our senses deceive us, he wanted all knowledge to be as clear and indisputable. This was his way of building a framework for certainty.
So, he was trying to find a basis for knowledge that was as reliable as math? But isn't that quite different from Hume's perspective?
Exactly. Hume took a completely different approach. He rejected the idea of innate truths and instead viewed the mind as a bundle of perceptions. For Hume, knowledge wasn't about starting from certain truths, but rather from sensory impressions and how they connect. Take the example of fire. When you feel heat from fire, it's not logically necessary to conclude that fire causes heat. This connection is more about habitual association based on experience rather than a deductive certainty. Hume emphasized that our understanding is built from these sensory experiences. In contrast to Descartes' method that builds knowledge from the top down through deduction, Hume's approach was inductive, constructing knowledge from the ground up based on empirical observation.
But doesn't that mean Hume's method is more open to uncertainty?
Yes, Hume's approach accepts that knowledge is provisional and subject to change as new experiences occur. This openness to uncertainty is what makes his method more adaptable to new information, unlike Descartes' quest for unshakable truths. This difference highlights a fundamental contrast in philosophy, between seeking absolute certainty and embracing the fluidity of knowledge. It's a tension that persists in various fields today, particularly in science where theories evolve with new evidence.
Speaking of different approaches, what about Descartes' idea of innate concepts? How does that fit into his philosophy?
Descartes proposed the hypothesis of innate ideas, suggesting that certain concepts, like God, perfection, and even numbers, are hardwired into our minds. He believed these ideas didn't come from experience but were inherent within us, providing a foundation for knowledge. This notion of innate ideas was part of his rationalist framework, where reason unveils truths that don't rely on sensory experiences. It was a way to ensure that some knowledge remains constant and reliable. For Descartes, these innate ideas were akin to mathematical truths, forming a basis that couldn't be doubted. They were essential to his quest for certainty, serving as fixed points around which other knowledge could be built.
But wouldn't Hume argue against the idea of innate concepts, given his focus on experience?
Absolutely. Hume would contend that all ideas are ultimately derived from experience. He would argue that what Descartes considered innate might actually be learned through subtle, cumulative experiences over time. Hume's empirical philosophy suggests that even complex ideas, like those of God or perfection, can be traced back to simpler sensory impressions. He believed the mind categorizes and associates these impressions to form what we perceive as complex ideas. This debate between innate versus acquired ideas reflects a broader philosophical discussion about the origins of knowledge, influencing disciplines ranging from cognitive science to educational theory. Continuing with Descartes, he argued that our idea of God serves as proof of God's existence. He believed humans couldn't independently conceive of a perfect being without that concept being innate. To him, this idea of perfection was not only innate but also a testament to God's presence and influence. He viewed human reason as a reflection of divine reason. This connection provided him with a metaphysical guarantee of truth, as he saw reason as a divine gift that reflects an ultimate truth and order in the universe.
But wouldn't Hume argue that these ideas are just complex recombinations of simpler impressions?
Precisely. Hume's copy principle asserts that all ideas are derived from impressions. He believed that complex ideas are essentially combinations of simple impressions we've experienced. For instance, the concept of a golden mountain is merely a recombination of the ideas of gold and a mountain, both of which are derived from sensory experiences. Hume maintained that no idea exists without a prior sensory origin. This perspective highlights the importance he placed on experience as the foundation of all our ideas, in stark contrast to Descartes' notion of innate ideas.
So, how does this difference in perspective affect our understanding of reality?
It leads to a fundamental philosophical implication. For Descartes, the mind structures reality. He believed our innate ideas provide a framework through which we understand the world. In contrast, Hume argued that reality structures the mind, suggesting that our perceptions and experiences shape our understanding. This philosophical divide has modern implications, especially in fields like artificial intelligence. Rationalist AI models, like those Descartes might have envisioned, rely on pre-programmed rules and logic. Meanwhile, data-driven machine learning, akin to Hume's empirical approach, uses vast amounts of data to learn patterns and make decisions.
That's an intriguing connection. How do these differences extend to their views on causality?
Descartes viewed the universe as a mechanical system governed by a divine mathematical order. He believed that God ensured the connection between cause and effect, making physics intelligible through rational laws. To him, this divine order was what made the natural world predictable and comprehensible. In contrast, Hume was skeptical about the notion of cause and effect. He argued that our belief in causality stems from habitual associations rather than logical necessity. We assume a cause and effect relationship because we've observed it repeatedly, not because it's inherently true. For Hume, this skepticism about causality pointed to the limits of human knowledge. He believed that while we can observe patterns and make predictions, we can never be entirely certain about the underlying nature of those connections.
So, Descartes saw a divine order, while Hume saw uncertainty in our understanding of cause and effect?
Exactly. Descartes' mechanical universe underscores a belief in an orderly, predictable world, backed by divine assurance. Meanwhile, Hume's skepticism highlights the provisional nature of human knowledge and the limitations of assuming certainty in causality. This ongoing tension between certainty and skepticism continues to shape philosophical and scientific discussions. It challenges us to consider how we balance the pursuit of knowledge with an acceptance of its inherent uncertainties. Hume's skepticism about causality is intriguing. He argued that causality is never directly observed, it's only inferred from constant conjunctions, patterns we notice over time. For instance, we see the sun rise every morning and therefore expect it to rise tomorrow. However, this is based on past experience rather than certainty in an objective cause. In this view, cause is more of an expectation rather than an inherent feature of the world. Our knowledge about causality is thus shaped by how often we see things happen together, not necessarily by understanding the intrinsic link between them.
So, Hume's ideas suggest that our scientific knowledge is more about probabilities than certainties?
Exactly. Hume's skepticism leads to a perspective where scientific knowledge is always provisional. It encourages probabilistic thinking and scientific humility, acknowledging that our understanding is based on observed patterns rather than absolute truths. This notion influenced many later thinkers, including Kant, who proposed his Copernican revolution in philosophy, suggesting that our knowledge is shaped by how we perceive the world rather than by the world itself.
How does this contrast with Descartes' view of the self and the mind?
Descartes described the self as a simple, indivisible thinking substance, what he called residential cogitans. He advocated for dualism, making a clear distinction between mental substances, like thoughts and consciousness, and physical substances, like the body. This dualistic view suggests a stable, continuous self, a rational ego that persists over time. It's a foundational idea for modern subjectivity, where our sense of self is seen as consistent and unified.
And how does Hume approach the concept of the self?
Hume proposed the bundle theory, which is quite different. He suggested there's no constant I. Instead, the self is just a stream of perceptions, akin to a theater with many scenes but no fixed actor behind them. The self is, in his view, a fiction created by memory and habit. For Hume, our identity is more about the connections we make between these perceptions rather than an unchanging core. This challenges the idea of a stable, enduring self and introduces a more fluid concept of identity.
What are the broader implications of these differing views on the self?
Descartes' perspective supports the notion of a rational, stable ego, forming the basis of modern subjectivity. It suggests that individuals have a coherent sense of self that persists, which is fundamental to many philosophical and psychological theories. On the other hand, Hume's view implies a more fragmented and dynamic understanding of identity. It questions the stability of the self and suggests that our sense of identity is more about narrative and memory than an inherent essence. These contrasting views have profound implications for areas like psychology, where understanding the nature of the self is crucial, and for debates about consciousness, personal identity, and even the nature of reality itself. Hume's perspective, which dissolves the notion of a stable ego, anticipates many developments in psychology and neuroscience. His view laid the groundwork for understanding the mind as a collection of experiences rather than a fixed entity, influencing how we think about consciousness today. Now, when we turn to the topic of God and morality, Descartes and Hume again diverge significantly. Descartes saw God as the foundation of all truth. He believed that God, in his perfection, guarantees the truth of clear and distinct ideas. This divine assurance was crucial for Descartes, as it harmonized knowledge and faith, providing a moral order derived from divine perfection.
So, Descartes connected morality with a divine source. But what about Hume's view on ethics?
Hume took a naturalistic approach, arguing that ethics are rooted in emotion rather than reason. For him, moral judgments are more about how we feel than about logical deduction. For example, he believed that compassion, rather than logic, drives us to condemn cruelty. His famous assertion, "Reason is, and ought only to be, the slave of the passions," encapsulates this idea. Hume suggested that our emotions guide our moral compass, with reason serving to support these emotional inclinations.
How did this view influence later philosophical thought?
Hume's approach marked a philosophical turn from metaphysical to psychological explanations of morality. It paved the way for moral psychology and secular ethics, emphasizing the role of human emotions in ethical decision-making. This shift is significant as it moved away from divine or absolute moral standards to a more human-centered understanding of ethics. In historical context, Descartes was a product of the scientific revolution. He reacted against the medieval scholasticism of his time, using mathematics and geometry as models of certainty. His rational subject emerged alongside modern science and capitalism, reflecting the values of a society embracing reason and empirical inquiry.
And how did Hume's era shape his ideas?
Hume was deeply influenced by the Enlightenment, an era characterized by a growing skepticism of traditional authority and a focus on human reason as a guiding principle. This intellectual environment encouraged questioning established norms and emphasized empirical evidence and scientific inquiry. While Descartes laid the groundwork for rationalism and the scientific method, Hume's emphasis on experience and emotion reflected the Enlightenment's broader shift towards understanding human nature and society through observation and reason.
It's fascinating how their respective eras influenced their philosophical directions and how those ideas continue to resonate today.
Indeed, the interplay of their ideas continues to be relevant, shaping discussions not only in philosophy but also in fields like science, ethics, and psychology. The balance between reason and emotion, certainty and skepticism, remains a central theme in our quest to understand the world and our place within it. Hume's era, marked by skepticism and empiricism, placed a strong emphasis on scientific observation and the experimental method. This was evident in the works of Newton and Boyle, who prioritized evidence-based understanding over metaphysical speculation. Hume rejected metaphysics to focus on human limitations. He believed that understanding our cognitive boundaries was crucial for making sense of the world. This emphasis on empirical inquiry contrasted sharply with Descartes' rationalist approach.
So, while Descartes was building foundations, Hume was more about questioning and deconstructing existing beliefs.
Exactly. Descartes was the foundational builder, setting the stage for modern rationalism, while Hume acted as a careful demolisher, challenging and refining our understanding of knowledge and experience. Together, they define the boundaries of modern thought, balancing reason against experience. In terms of their philosophical descendants, Descartes' influence is seen in thinkers like Spinoza, Leibniz, and Kant, who sought to develop rational structures. In contrast, Hume inspired empiricists, positivists, and even modern cognitive scientists.
Kant tried to bring these two perspectives together, right?
Yes, Kant attempted a synthesis of Descartes' rational form with Hume's empirical content. His famous dictum, "Thoughts without content are empty, intuitions without concepts are blind," captures this blend. He was trying to show that both rationalism and empiricism are necessary to fully understand human knowledge. This synthesis has had a lasting impact, influencing how we approach scientific theories, where theory and observation must work hand in hand, and even in AI, where rule-based systems are complemented by data-driven approaches.
And the debate between certainty and doubt still resonates today?
Absolutely. The ongoing discourse between certainty and doubt continues to influence various fields, from scientific methodology to philosophical debates and technological advancements. It underscores the persistent tension between seeking absolute truths and embracing the provisional nature of knowledge. Both Descartes and Hume have left us with a legacy that challenges us to question how we understand reality, navigate the tension between reason and experience, and consider the implications of our beliefs in practical terms.
As we close this discussion, it's clear that the dialogue between Descartes and Hume still shapes our intellectual landscape. Their contrasting approaches remind us of the importance of balancing reason with experience. While questions remain about the nature of knowledge and the mind, their enduring influence encourages us to continue exploring these fundamental issues. For those interested in diving deeper, Kant's critique of pure reason offers an insightful exploration of these themes.